Next panel is Inge Grafe-Kieklak, Scott R. Kurkoski, Esquire, Joint Landowners Coalition, Levene, Gouldin, and Thompson, and Victor Furman.
The original counsel said good morning.
Yes, I know. Inge's testimony optimistically starts, "Good morning." But we're glad you...
No, it's, I changed.
Thank you. No, we like optimism. It's okay.
Can you all see this? If not, I'll put it over there. You just put it up here anyway. You can even
Sure,
have
we'll
it.
pass it, we'll pass it
You
around.
can even have it.
Okay?
Do you want to drink the water?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Inge Grafe-Kieklak. I'm
Could
a
you
New
just
Yorker.
check and see if that microphone is on? Push
Or
the
does
button.
it-
There you go. That's
Oh,
it.
okay.
Now you're good.
Okay. My name is Inge Grafe-Kieklak. I'm a New Yorker, a taxpayer, and a resident. I'm not here today to bore you with facts about gas drilling. I have found out in these 4+ years that the facts do not interest you. So instead, I'm here to tell you about my rights and what your responsibilities to all New Yorker residents are. New York State has a population of 19.2 million people. And in the last public comment period, over 80,000 pieces of testimony were received. This is a little over 1% of the population. With comments coming in not only from New York, but even other countries. A few years ago, I attended one of Professor Ingrafia's hydraulic fracturing roadshow tours. He said that scientists put everything in relation to everything else. So, if you put the population numbers and comment numbers in relation to one another, that you do not have much to show for, except maybe just to show off. And even if there were 100,000 comments submitted, that would be only a small percentage of New York State population. Now let's see where we stand after more than 4 years of political grandstanding on hydraulic fracturing. New York State ranks 50th in the nation for being business friendly. This is something we should be proud of. In Sullivan County, where my husband and I live, ranks the 2nd poorest county in the state. What a wonderful thing to write home about. The state is billions in debt. I assume you all read the latest analysis from Controller Di Napoli. The state cannot spend what it does not have and has no intention of being able to deliver. We cannot continue to tax our citizens to the point of leaving the state. Tourism, yogurt plants, commercial and organic farming will not produce the billions in revenue and jobs that we desperately need, and now. We have already lost 2 congressional seats to people leaving the state, which means we lose a voice in Washington, due to high taxes and dysfunction. At that point, how can you sit here and have the audacity to ask for more delays on gas drilling? You You have a proven business model, and it can be done safely and will not cost the state and its taxpayers any subsidies, yet we still sit and continue to do nothing. You are voted in by the people, and you are paid by the people. You are civil servants. This means you have to serve all of us, not just the ones you think can help advance your career. Political grandstanding should not be a career choice. New York City uses a lot of natural gas, and we have it right here in our backyard. Natural gas is proven to reduce CO2 in the atmosphere and is good for the environment. In Germany, where I come from, natural gas is considered an environmentally friendly fuel. Natural gas could assist in the children living in New York City alleviate asthma. Heating costs would be reduced for many, and it would help the budget issues in New York State. We could have money for our schools, roads, and other infrastructure products. Hope could once again return to the upstate community, and best of all, and I must say it again, it would not need any taxpayer funding to get it going. But once again, what is occurring with continued delay tactics is just the opposite. You are stalling because some very vocal, media-savvy, Hollywood one-percenters and their cult followings. These individuals who have no scientific credentials, you promise them the moon. You are guilty of stalling this long-awaited process, and you're guilty of following a cult called environmentalism. It's telling by the fact that you are waiting this long to hold your own hearings and right before public comments are due back to the DEC. You are throwing New York State under the bus with your tactics, and do so without feeling any shame. Those so-called environmentalists are not for the environment. This is a power struggle between the haves and the have-not. If you scare people, they believe, and they pay you to spread the vicious lies. These organizations that are fighting hydraulic fracturing and the economic development are supposed to be 401c3 tax-exempt non-profit and therefore have no right to lobby, yet somehow they fall through the cracks and do exactly this. Nowhere in these so-called grassroots groups are there grassroots people. They are all paid activists. So I ask you, when you were sworn in, you pledged to hold up the Constitution, but you're working against it for your own personal re-election instead of doing what is right for the people of the state. It is our Constitution and our deeded right to harvest our own minerals on our own land. Do you think a farmer would want to jeopardize his land and animals where he and his family have lived for many generations? He is the real steward of the land, not people coming in the area with little knowledge and lots of illusions. No farmer wants to poison his land, and anyone who tells you different is a liar. Lastly, we have had hydraulic fracturing in the United States since 1940 with millions of fractured wells. Why is it all of a sudden, when it would come to New York State, there are all these problems? Do you really think we would have not heard anything in all those years? I hope you will reason with your head and the facts when you make decision that pertains to the residents of New York State, and not be swept away by this emotional hysteria that is going on around us regarding gas drilling. You're supposed to be the leaders making unbiased decisions that advances and helps the state and all its residents. I think it should be mandatory for all our elected officials to go and see an actual drilling site in Pennsylvania, because seeing for yourself is more helpful than reading about it, and only then can you make an educated decision. I hope I can trust you to make the best decision to serve the people you were elected to serve and to make a decision that is helpful for all New Yorkers, not just for the 1%. Do you?
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of 245 landowners and the Sapbush Gas Group Coalition, where drilling will take place in New York. What a great day to be an American. I never thought I'd find myself here in the legislature, and all my time that I've been on this earth, I've never figured to be here testifying, and I really am nervous, but I thank you for being here. In 2005, a landman came to my land and offered me a lease. I told him no, I don't want your truck traffic, I don't know what the process is, I don't want you here. He came throughout 2005 and into 2006. I told him no again, even though his offers were higher and the money was tempting. 2007, more of the same, I told him no. 2008, I started suffering from the 2008 fall in the economy. I lost my job, 1 year short of retirement. My wife died. And the doctor said that it was because we lived in between AES in Westover and Anco coal manufacturing plant in Binghamton, New York. I did a lot of studying on coal before this became an issue. I was an advocate with the Sierra Club against coal. I've signed many petitions. Yet I have not heard one speaker here today speak out about the health impacts of coal, and yet we know there are many. Near a coal-fired power plant in any city, there are over 78,000 cases of asthma amongst children in larger cities. There are 36,000 deaths per year in larger cities related directly to coal. I find no information on that in gas anywhere in the country that even mimics that in the 1% percentile. Those offers to leave my those offers to forget that part. I just said that. Sorry. All right. Lease will have to wait, not because of a moratorium or a ban or a public opinion, but I decided that it was more important that I find out more information and what it meant to the land, and I will give and to the land that I will give my children. I and my neighbors, in 2008, when the offer of $3,000 an acre came, called a meeting. The landman told me, this offer is for you, no one else. And I called my best friend, who was a farmer down the street. He was told the same thing at $1,500 an acre. So do we trust the landsman? Do we trust the gas companies? That's not the question why we're here today. It's beyond that. We're 5 years into this argument. Our neighbors got together, not to decide how rich will we get, how greedy we're going to become. We got together to decide that it was important to understand how to move forward. We put a moratorium in place in our road group before Albany put a moratorium in place on the state. We stopped the leasing activity in our area because we told the landman we need answers. We want, we will, and we continue to protect our land simply because it is ours. The moratorium Albany put in place was welcome back in 2008, not just by those who opposed the drilling, but it was welcomed by us because it gave us time to gather more information about gas drilling. It allowed us time to educate ourselves. I was one of the very first coalitions to form in New York State, and when I found the Joint Landowners Coalition, I became a board member rather quickly. At that time, there was only 12 coalitions. I believe the number now is nearing 40. We got together as coalition leaders to work with rules and safeguards that needed to be put in place. We talked about the aggressiveness of landman. We talked about having Albany put a place where a landman needed to apply for permits to practice their practice. We put a lot of good ideas together and presented them, just like the antis put. I'm sorry, I'll call them activists because they are activists, just like I am. They're not anti; they are activists. But we put a lot of comments in, just like the activists did, and they were accepted in the DC comments, just like the activists who opposed drilling did. And they came up with many good things, just like we did, many things that were adopted. In 2010, when the Senate extended the moratorium, we understood why, even though we felt we were ready with leases, well-written, in some cases, better than the DEC's own draft regulations. We endured the DEC hearings that came to Binghamton, to LaPorte, and to other areas. Those were the two I attended. We attended the EPA hearings, not accusing the DEC of being sold out to the gas companies or being sold for the highest dollar by politicians. When the EPA hearings came, we welcomed them. We supported them. And like the Suttoners who carried that brown jug of water that you might see here today, we've seen it in Albany here so many times as we've attended protests from both sides. We begged them, like the Suttoners, please test that water in Dimmick. We want to know. They did. 61 wells in the Dimmick-Cabot affected area were tested. And not one was contaminated by the process of hydrofracking. This was news in the headlines. This isn't something I'm making up. Labor Day, we were told we would get a release of the geysers. But then the health impact study was announced that it was going to be reviewed. And Labor Day came and left without the regulations being released. We don't need any more delays. We are ready after 4.5 years. Labor Day come and left without the regulations. A health impact study, now the latest delay. In September 2011, it was to be announced. Delay 90 days, 30 more days for health impact study, a comment period. Now we're here today because someone says 30 days, that includes the holidays. It's not enough time to comment. I ask you what can be said now that wasn't already said in the 80,000 comments of the 120-day comment period just 1 year ago. All across the southern tier, in churches in Binghamton and Ithaca, and proudly displayed throughout the last 30 days on public TV, the message delay came out. It's time to recognize that we are ready to move forward and quit playing with people's lives through politics meant to appease the loud minority. A petition of 100,000 signatures is not the voice of upstate New York, or the state itself. It's not even 1/10% of the total population, and 30% are not even from New York. Today I heard comment that there were 7,000 truck trips per well. And then I heard comment there were 4,000. It's obviously that no one knows how many truck trips per well there will be because the geology of each well is going to be different. It can be as little as 800. It can be as many as 4,000. That is unknown. I heard about truck hazards and traffic. Just 1 year ago, in the city of Buffalo, a 3,000-gallon tanker of gasoline being delivered to a gas station tipped over, and that gasoline spilled into the water, into the sewage, which went right into the waterway. I do not remember the name of the river. Accidents happen, unfortunately. Are we to live in the fear of accidents, or are we to move forward thinking that we are Americans that can do so in the progress of our own science? Are we to live in that kind of fear? Is that what we have become? I heard a woman at 9 o'clock this morning, 9:30, say that I created a website called 30 Days of Fracking. This too was announced on public TV in Binghamton, New York. And along with that announcement, as they stood in the Unitarian Church of Ithaca, they said, I want you to write your comment online, submit it. I want you to print it, I want you to mail it. I want you to print it again and bring it to me so we can submit it when we go to Albany. The only tactic here is delay. You can delay, delay, and delay. You can play these games with our lives, but I am not a representative of the gas company. I am not representing anyone but myself here today and the members of my coalition. There's been too many delays. I have lost friends who have died of heart attacks. I have got friends who have lost their land because of this delay, who had lost their jobs in 2008 and after 3 years of not being able to collect a paycheck, lost their homes and their farms. Just yesterday, an associate, not a friend, I want to make that clear, an associate told me right here in the lobby that he had to sell 90 cows of his farm so he could pay his taxes because milk production prices are too low. Farming is in big trouble in New York State, and you need to recognize that. It's not just going to be the farms up that have grow grapes in Ithaca or the organic farms in Cooperstown. There are farms spread all across upstate New York, and you need to realize that we are hurting. We are hurting. Now, I understand that the legislator body got to watch Gasland some 2 years ago in 2010 with Josh Fox and Mark Ruffalo and Deborah Winger in attendance, I believe. I went to New York City Monday and I watched the premiere of Frack Nation, which is a pro-gas movie that just came out. It stars Josh Fox, Julie Sautner and her husband Craig, the DRBC commissioner, and they are not prompted to say what they say in this movie. They say it because they are asked a question and they volunteer the information they volunteer. I would like to bring this movie to the legislative, if you are interested, to watch this movie, because this movie shakes the foundation that this movement is built upon, not with innuendos or accusations, but facts right from the mouth of the people who started it. It is important, in my mind, that you see this movie. There is a scene in it which includes one of the, I can't think of his name, but he's the most awarded scientist in the United States, Nobel Peace Prize, everything you can imagine, he's won it. And he held up a head of cabbage, and he said, everything in this cabbage has a chemical component. And I cannot repeat those words, because unlike many of the doctors you have here today, I don't have that kind of degree. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I chose to go that way. When he held up that head of cabbage and started naming the chemicals that made that head of cabbage, if it wasn't there for you to look at, you would think he was talking about fracking. The chemicals sounded horrid. And then he said every one of them is a carcinogen. Every one of those chemicals in that cabbage was a carcinogen. Every one of them will kill you if you eat enough. Just like the laboratory rat that we feed all the chemicals until it dies, just to see how much it takes. We are not laboratory rats here in New York. We aren't. We are people, real people who consume real energy. The sun that comes down is the energy that we use the most, and I applaud that. And people say, well, Vic, how do you say the sun provides most of our energy? I love solar energy, because solar energy, without it, we would not have wind. We would not have windmills. Without it, we would not have clean burning natural gas. You know, clean burning natural gas is 47% cleaner than coal. I'm not talking about the extraction. I'm not a scientist, but much of what I heard here today about the extraction method, I do know is antiquated information that was 4 or 5 years ago. Much of the equipment being used now is being converted from diesel to natural gas, using the natural gas are taken right off the site. The truck traffic that we hear so much about, they are now building water pipelines to reduce the amount of trucks. Have any of you been to Tarm Industries in Pennsylvania? It's a water reclamation place where they bring the frac fluid. They are now 100% recycling frac fluids, and they can only use it so many times, so eventually it is going to be bad, but not like it was 4 years ago. They are using far much less water. I want you to consider what we're doing here today. I want you to consider what your jobs are. In Binghamton, I attended a hearing, and I heard Mayor Matt Ryan say, it's my job to protect the citizens of Binghamton from anything that can harm their health. I agree with that. But as the mayor of Binghamton, it is also his job to make sure that the Binghamton people have jobs, and that the people in the Broome County area have jobs, where drilling is going to take place. And this is no longer about jobs. We all know it's going to create jobs. All you have to do is type up gas-related jobs in Pennsylvania, and the Department of Labor in PA comes up with 40,000 direct-related drilling jobs to the industry and 240,000 jobs that sustain those 40,000 jobs in the drilling industry. And you read stories about unemployment rate dropping in the drilling counties, and then you read stories about it's not true. But when you look at, I saw one of the presentations where they said, it's not true. Unemployment in Pennsylvania is still 8.9%. But that was state overall. In the drilling communities, it does drop. In Bradford County, it went from 10% to 3.3. I don't know what it is today. I'm talking last year's figures. We need this more than anybody can imagine. I have 4 children. 3 of them who were in the military, 2 of them who served in Iraq. The phrase, drill a wall, bring home a soldier, that was coined by me and a friend, Sue Dorsey, who could not be here today. It was actually Sue's idea while we were talking about the problems of drilling and the fights we were in to get our drilling going here in New York. When I asked my daughter, who was wounded in Iraq, I said, what was your job in Fallujah? She said, supplies, and to protect the oil fields. When I read about the USS Cole, 17 dead, 37 disfigured and wounded, and then I go to a meeting, a town meeting, and I say, drill a wall, bring home a soldier, and those against me say, that's bull, that's not true. I know better. So know the families of them 17 dead military members who were killed on the USS Cole in the Port of Yemen. They know better. They were there to protect the shipping lanes for foreign fuel to come to our country. Boone T. Pickens said it best. It's time for us to be a customer at the table, or a player at the table instead of a customer in the hallway. These are things you need to take into consideration. Is public health impact important to me? I got 11 grandchildren, 5 of which live in my property. I will not do anything that I would think would harm them. My daughter had cancer, and at that time, that's when the doctor told me that we should move away from the Ansco plant in Binghamton, and we were between the Ansco and the AES plant that provided electricity for Binghamton. He said you might want to leave there, especially after I told him that when I could set a glass of milk down in my backyard, it would be covered with black soot within a half an hour. And that's the truth. Whether that's the same way or not, I understand both the plants have been closed, but that was still the effect of coal. Eric Schneiderman, our Attorney General, is suing Pennsylvania because of coal pollution coming up here. It takes 1 tablespoon of mercury to pollute Skaneateles Lake beyond drinking, and it brings the fish up where you cannot eat them anymore. Just 1 tablespoon. 1 coal-fired power plant in the United States produces 179 pounds per year. Coal ash dust has more radiation, 500 times the amount of radiation than the Marcellus shale cuttings have. You can look that up. I know this because I've been in this fight for a long time against coal. I think I might have even brought coal to this fight because I started speaking out and blogging about it back in 2008. We need to understand that it's not just the scientific minds that control the destiny of this state. It's you, it's me, it's the farmers, and the scientific minds all together. We need to come to a consensus of what's good, what's bad. And I have been all over Pennsylvania. I started visiting the wells in 2008. And like I said in the beginning, I was against it. But I started visiting the wells, going on actual well tours where you were allowed on the well pad, and looking and asking questions, and what are you doing with this? And I seen them go. I heard somebody say there were open pits today for flowback fluid. If you read the geysers, you know better. There's no open pits for flowback fluid in New York State. We gotta come to this consensus where we work together and not at each other. I am so sick. I have been to meetings where I've been spit on, punched. I have gone home, found paint on the back of my jacket. And I'm not saying that everybody is like that. There are a lot of good people that I talk to on the opposition, a lot of good people. Unfortunately, yesterday, when I came for the rally, I brought 350 people with me. I organized the people that came up from Broome County, 350. When we got here, there was 1,000 people who were opposed to fracking. They weren't hollering, let's get a health study. They were hollering, ban fracking. That's what they want. They're not looking at the picture. And then I put my sign down because everybody knows if you're carrying a gas sign and you ask an activist against drilling a question, they don't want to talk. If you've ever been out there in the field and they don't know you and you tell them you're for drilling but would like to talk to them, because I've done this lots of times, I'm shut off. No, you can't change my mind. I don't want to discuss this with you. I have heard that so many times. Yesterday, I put my sign down. I walked up and down asking people, where are you from? Are you against drilling? Yeah, I'm against it. Where are you guys from? Well, I'm from Schenectady. I'm from Albany. I'm from New York City. Very few people that I talked to, and I couldn't talk to everybody. Nobody could. But I recognize the players from my area that are against it. I recognize them just like they recognize me. So I figured, if Albany doesn't want natural gas and Broome County does, with your 303,000 citizens depending on it here in the city, and all your office buildings depending on natural gas, if you don't want it, if New York City, with 67% of the population using natural gas, if they don't want it, and Schenectady and Buffalo and Syracuse, if they don't want it, turn it off. Because if there's no demand, there's no market. If there's no market, there's no drilling. But we all use it, and we need to come together as a team. Everything here, everything in this room somehow is related to the production of natural gas, except for the wood and the water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Furman. Mr. Kurkoski?
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Kurkoski. I represent the Joint Landowner Coalition of New York. The JLC represents the common interests of 39 independent landowner coalitions throughout the state, whose members own over 1 million acres of unleased land over the Marcellus Shale and other natural gas deposits. This isn't in my written report, but I also represent Jennifer Huntington. Jennifer Huntington is the dairy farmer who has commenced the action against the town of Middlefield. This issue over whether a town can ban drilling or not affects all of us. It's not just local rights. They're talking about state rights as well. We're talking about the state, our legislators being able to decide what our energy policy is within the state itself. And by the way, the Farm Bureau is also with us in that case. They believe, just as we do, that those decisions should not be made at the local level, that those decisions should be made by the experts and the career professionals at the DEC. In addition, over 40 towns in the southern tier have signed a resolution which all say that they believe that they should not be passing moratoriums against gas in their towns, and that those decisions, again, should be made at the state level. They believe that because they understand that if we're allowed to have gas drilling decided on by a 3-2 town board vote, that we're not going to be able to move forward in this state. We're not going to be able to have an effective energy policy as we move forward. And in fact, this morning, Tim Weitzel, president of the Association of Towns, addressed you. Tim Weitzel is the supervisor of the town of Binghamton. His town voted on one of those positive resolutions, and Tim was also one of those people that voted for that positive resolution. This morning I submitted the JLC's written comments to the DEC's high-volume hydraulic fracturing proposed regulations. We are hopeful that after 4 years the DEC will complete its regulations and the SGAS so that permits for drilling in New York in their shale resources can begin. Now, we've heard this many times today, natural gas is not a perfect fuel, nor is its development risk-free. But natural gas must be viewed in context with all of our other energy choices, just as Mr. Furman was just talking about. Japan experienced a devastating nuclear accident in its Fukushima nuclear power plant. The Japanese government announced that it will make its country nuclear-free by the 2030s. We know that someday we will need to replace the power generated by the Indian Point nuclear power plant. What's the plan to do that? I doubt very seriously that the plan will be to replace that with another nuclear power plant. Suddenly, I'm hearing many people singing the praises of coal. Why is that? In my view, there are people who simply do not want to see change in their communities. For many, the known devil is better than the unknown angel. According to the Clean Air Task Force in its 2010 study, pollution from coal-fired power plant emissions caused an estimated 13,500 premature deaths nationwide and roughly 945 in New York in 2010. The total cost of health problems related to coal plants is more than $1 billion a year in the United States. And what true environmentalist would ever argue for the continued destruction of our country's mountaintops to support coal mining? Renewable energies, they are coming. They're coming along, they're getting better all the time, but they are still not ready to support our energy needs. For now, they require massive government subsidies to survive, and renewables cause vast surface disruption. Entire mountain ranges are rendered useless by wind farms. Now, there was a time when I'd be driving up to the Adirondacks with my children, and we would think it'd be kind of neat. Except now that we're seeing more and more wind farms and more surface disruption and the inability to use those giant mountain ranges within New York because of wind farms, we understand what this is about. What we don't understand is what will the consequences be in 50 years when the companies that put those wind farms up today are no longer here anymore. Have you been to the St. Lawrence River and seen the wind farm on Wolf Island in Lake Ontario? Do you know how many more of those wind farms will be needed to support our energy needs? But natural gas is a temporary disruption, and what is left, according to the DEC, is a production pad of 1.5 acres for a multi-well pad. Now, the New York Public Service Commission recently came out with an order instituting proceeding and establishing further procedures. That was issued November 30, 2012. And in there they made some very important observations. I think we heard this morning that we're only hearing from the governor and the DEC in their view, but the Public Service Commission is now weighing in on these issues. And here are some quotes from that order. Natural gas is cleaner than other fossil fuels used for home heating. Under current price conditions, the typical homeowner who converts from number 2 oil to natural gas could save about $1,300 per year. Use of natural gas that displaces oil or coal consumption will result in lower overall emissions. That's climate control. We have to address climate control. And our Public Service Commission is telling us that the conversion from coal to natural gas will reduce our emissions. Expanding the availability of natural gas also is likely to have important implications for economic development and the job market within New York. There were questions this morning about whether there have been independent studies upon economic issues. Well, now we at least know that the Public Service Commission believes that there will be economic development and jobs from natural gas. I'll tell you, we have in Windsor, New York, and Broome County, we have the Dunbar compressor station that services the laser pipeline. Let's see if this has ever happened to you. In Windsor, the Windsor school taxes have gone down this year by 5%, even though their school budget has gone up. It's never happened in my school district. But it happened there because the Dunbar compressor station has a $26 million assessed value. Now, we're not even open for business in New York. We're talking about bringing gas from Pennsylvania into New York. One small example of how we're going to have tax reduction from the process of natural gas. We know that there is a gas on production at the local level. That process will be continued and repeated over and over again as we see development. Furthermore, let's throw out the studies. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Binghamton, New York. We have this unique perspective because we are right on the border. We see what's going on in Pennsylvania. We see what's going on in our state. Many times people that I represent can hit gas wells with a rock from their property in New York, but they're going on in Pennsylvania. So this is what's really happening in the southern tier. Our airports are busier than they ever have been. That's true in Elmira Corning. That's true in Binghamton. Our hotels are busier, but they're busy because we see a lot of white pickup trucks outside, and there's a lot of activity that's going on there. Talked to the hotel owner of the Binghamton Holiday Inn, and he's someone who talking about these benefits on a constant basis. Friends of mine, I've got one friend that lives down the street from me in the town of Maine who has a tree service. He is busier than ever, and he's employed 10 people from Binghamton who are going down with him into Pennsylvania because they have got a tremendous amount of work there in Pennsylvania. My secretary, her husband's a former, or actually a current Assembly of God minister, out of work. He was working for a window company. But he received an offer to go to Ohio to work for a seismic testing company. They offered him a full year's salary in advance to go to Ohio. He's not working. It's an offer he can't refuse. Those stories are being repeated over and over again, but they're not stories about people working in Binghamton or working in Broome County or other parts of the southern tier. There are stories about people leaving New York to go to find jobs elsewhere. We're seeing, for instance, estate planning that my firm is doing with people that are experiencing gas wells in Pennsylvania. I had a woman sitting in front of me with her husband, and this couple never had anything their entire life. But they were about to receive within the next year $1 million. The very first thing that they said is that we want to give 10% to our local church and 10% to our local charity. Amazing. Now, that story is being repeated over and over again in Pennsylvania. Talk to the foundations there. They'll tell you that that's what's going on. They're getting a new hospital right now in Susquehanna County because of the benefits of natural gas and the things that are coming in through them. But New York's a very different picture. We're seeing record unemployment. We've got EIT now that just had layoffs in our area. Lockheed Martin has had layoffs. We lost Sikorsky in Elmira, in Horseheads area. We continue to get this news in the southern tier over and over again as we continue to just bleed jobs. And we've missed opportunities along the way. I hear people say all the time, well, the gas has been there for 1 million years or 1 billion years. What difference does it make if we wait a little bit longer? What difference it makes is that we have been, in my lifetime, the worst recession that we've ever seen. And we have this tremendous opportunity that we have not been able to capitalize on. And people in our community need to have it. They are losing their farms, they're losing their land, they can't pay their taxes. Property values have gone up, by the way, because we have this potential resource, and everyone else in the country understands that these properties will have great value. So if a town is reassessed, those taxes go up, and yet those property owners can't afford to pay them anymore because we can't move forward and they can't market the minerals that they have under their feet. We've had business opportunities that we've blown. We've got a $25 million capital project in Tioga County, New York, where an oil and gas company was going to set up their operations. Instead, they set it up 5 miles over the Pennsylvania border. And that's simply because of the atmosphere here in the state of New York. To us, those things, those stories are unconscionable, given what we have been going through with the recession since 2008. I often hear those opposed to gas, however, say that, well, this is just about money. And that's what I'm talking about now, right? It's just about money, it's just about greed. And the oil and gas companies are going to get rich about it. I'd like to point out that greed is not the same as fiscal responsibility. Lower taxes, lower utility bills, job creation, business growth, clean, affordable energy, and domestic power generation are all benefits we can achieve through natural gas development and an exercise of fiscal responsibility. As legislators, you have a responsibility to pursue these goals. We all have a national responsibility to reduce our dependency on foreign oil, and we have an environmental responsibility to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. It is our hope that this legislative body embraces these opportunities. In Pennsylvania, again, we are seeing in Bradford County, they are now putting in natural gas power plants to replace the coal power plants. Better for the environment, but the thinking on this is that, hey, we have this cheap, affordable energy. The winner, by the way, in this race, this economic race we're all in, the winner is the one that can have cheap, clean energy. And in Bradford County, they know it. And they're parlaying the opportunity they have into other opportunities. Get cheap energy through natural gas power plants. Let's bring other businesses in, completely outside of the natural gas industry, bring other businesses in so that our area will continue to thrive even beyond the expiration of some of these wells. Earlier, someone was asking about a company and what the effects might be on a company for natural gas and how that might be affected. Sydney, New York is a great example. Amphenol is a company that was there and had experienced our 2 devastating floods. They were completely leaving the area. And I think they had something like 1,500 employees in the Sydney area. They were only there because of the great work of our legislators and our economic development people that said, we can't lose another factory, another employer of 1,500 people in Sydney, New York, in upstate New York. And so they were going to stay until Sydney, New York started to talk about having a gas moratorium. And then their main office, which is outside of New York State, said, hey, what are we doing? The whole part of this economic development package was not just that we'll have some help with our flood repairs, but the major part of that was we will be able to use natural gas, local natural gas, to replace our more expensive number 2 fuel oil, because that's how they're running their company. Those are the types of benefits that we're going to see, and that's where New York State is going to be more competitive economically. Our health department will soon complete its health impact review. When the study comes out, I urge you to keep in mind just a few more questions. What are the health impacts of poverty and unemployment? What are the health impacts on our young men and women who are fighting to protect our interests in foreign countries? What are the health impacts of giving billions of dollars away to our enemies who would like to do us harm? We need to examine all of these issues. We need to examine the different energy sources. We need to examine how we're going to get to renewables as a greater source of energy. We need to examine all of these issues in this context. It is not just one. We cannot sit here in a hearing all day long and talk about the faults of one particular energy by itself. Everything has to be considered together. This country was built on a can-do attitude, but these days the loudest voices are those with a can't-do philosophy. We can't do gas. We can't do wind. You know that there's opposition to windmills. We can't do power lines or transmission lines or pipelines. And those can't-doers keep us in constant gridlock, unable to recognize an opportunity right under our feet. Please do not join those voices. Let's make a difference. Let's be part of the solution for the good of our communities, for our state, and our nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.